your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song. We'll all be flying higher than a jetliner. And if you want a little bang in your yin-yang, come along. Well, we flew through Cincinnati and we all got really happy. Grabbed a bowl of that skyline chili along the way. Then we rode on into Canton, scared the hell out of Marilyn Manson. Of a Charleston night, we ran into Jessica White. Well, we're coming to your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song. We'll all be flying higher than a jetliner. And if you want a little bang in your yin-yang, come along.
Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios on this Thursday. It's September 17th, but more importantly, it feels like Christmas. Dustin Schutte sitting in from Saturday Tradition. John Blau from the Bloomington Herald-Times is joining us as well. But today feels a little like Christmas, Dustin Schutte, as we have the return of Big Ten football.
You know, it felt yesterday like I was Rocky running up the steps there in Philadelphia and have it going in at the top and punching around, you know, my fists and everything, because it was a big reason to celebrate yesterday, finally. And I don't know about you, but despite all the reports that came out, all the flooding, I didn't believe a single word until we got confirmation from the Big Ten Conference.
Oh, of course not. I mean, because there are reports that were coming out attributed to presidents that were conflicting. The president, I think it was Wisconsin, was very misleading. She spoke to a Senate subcommittee and was asked directly about the return, and she was like, well, we're going to take our time and blah, blah, blah. I think that was the morning of or the day before the official decision came out, the announcement came out, which was yesterday. So I was like, yeah, whatever. But I don't care. It's back. So how about yesterday on BTN? I think it was the reporter, I forget his name, I should have looked that up, but I think it was from the Cleveland Plain Dealer, who asked Kevin Warren directly, hey, what about your lack of communication with all of the participants throughout all this? I appreciate your question, blah, blah, blah. And then he just toe danced around it for the next 5 minutes and did a do-si-do. But the fact that he was not prepared for that question really aggravated me. I was willing to give him a pass on all this crap before, because he's new. It's new. It's a pandemic, you know, just because to try to be nice. But yesterday, when he's going in public for the first time and he's not prepared for that question that he has to know is coming, his pass is gone. I'm done. I'm like, yep, that's out.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about that was, you know, he's had all this time to prepare for these questions. He's known what the backlash has been like since the very beginning. And he said at one point, you know, back in August, that he was surprised by the fact that there was so much backlash. And it kind of took me by surprise. And it's just like, do you not have a firm grasp of how important football is, not just at the college level, but in the Big Ten? You have some of the biggest players in the game with Nebraska, with Ohio State, with Michigan, and, you know, so many others where football is king. And you don't think you're going to get some heat for making that decision and not providing any answers? So, you know, again, he was bad his very first time he made the appearance on Big Ten Network back on August 11th when they announced the initial decision to postpone the season. He wasn't any better this week. He just kind of speaks in cliches and canned phrases, and it was just incredibly disappointing once again. But at the very least, I mean, at least he reported some good news this week, so I think we were able to give him a pass on that. And I think most of the people were most of us watching were just kind of listening to what some of the other people had to say, Barry Alvarez on what the schedule is going to look like, Sandy Barber on what attendance is going to look like, and some of those other people. So to me, yeah, he wasn't any better than he was, a little over a month ago, but at least he gave us some good news this time.
Yeah. And good news is a positive stretch. And then there's the big question of the rest of fall sports people have asked about, but this so far has been strictly about football. And now the return of fall sports, because the NCAA had already canceled all fall sports championships. Now, I think that some that's going to be revisited, but a lot of it has already been moved to the spring. They'll look at it, but I personally just am glad to have football back. I know that sounds selfish, but we need football for a myriad of reasons, and I'm glad we have it.
Well, and you talk about having football back, and yes, it is selfish on our end because obviously we love football, and that's the premier sport, right? That's what everybody tunes into on Saturday afternoons or Thursday nights or whatever the case might be. But at the same time, football is the sport that drives these other fall sports. So if you don't have football, you're going to see programs eliminated. I mean, you've already seen it at places like Iowa and Minnesota that have had to eliminate sports already. And there's plenty of other, schools in the Big Ten or outside the Big Ten, I should say, that have had to nix a number of sports. So it is selfish, but at the same time, I mean, it's a necessary thing that we have to have college football. We have to have that television revenue. I know the Big Ten is not going to look at attendance this year outside of family. So you're going to already miss quite a bit of that chunk of money. But if you can get some of that TV revenue, if you can get some of that bowl money, if you can get some of that college football playoff revenue this year, that's going to help offset at least some of the cost and might be able to save some of these other fall sports that, quite honestly, we don't know if we're going to have past the 2020-21 season just because of the financial fallout from everything stemming from the cancellation of March Madness to these, this reduced capacity college football season.
What about the Pac-12? Now they are. I thought that there was no way that they would come back, even with this started. But does it appear now that that's going to be the case, that they are going to be coming back?
The latest I saw was that the Pac-12 commissioner, Larry Scott. Now they've had some conversations with government officials in California and Oregon, but he's still saying that the earliest they could come back is November. So I don't know. I mean, this is what we talked about with the Big Ten, right? Why come back in November when you have the opportunity to play in October and compete for a college football playoff spot and compete for bowl eligibility? So they might be able to come back earlier. It'll be interesting to see because now players that they saw in the Pac-12, now that they've seen what happened in the Big Ten and saw how that worked, they're starting to voice their opinions a little bit more here. So it'll be interesting to see if they have as strong a push. But, like I said, Larry Scott seems to believe that November, he didn't give a date, but sometime in November is the earliest the Pac-12 can come back. And I think a lot of that has to do with, out on the West Coast, not only are they dealing with different issues with the COVID-19 pandemic, but they've also got forest fires and they have a lot of other issues going on out there. So it'll be interesting to see if there's a strong push from Pac-12 players, knowing that the Big 12 or the Big 10 is back. But I would be surprised if they play any earlier than November.
And then we also have the return date of college basketball announced. It's so I'm telling you, this is like Christmas Day, man. I'm just opening up present after present. Now we've got a return date for college basketball. What was that? The 25th, I think, November 25th. The night before Thanksgiving Eve, which back when I was in college, that was which I think a holiday night is what you would call that. But man, can you imagine that week? That week is going to be bigger, maybe bigger than the week between Christmas and New Year's. You could have a college football game Tuesday night, which they probably will since they already have Tuesday games. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 5 consecutive straight days. You've got the start of college basketball. We've got those tournaments that are being housed in a bubble. So it's going to be a cornucopia of sports at appropriate time of Thanksgiving. So, man, it's going to be exciting. Yeah,
you're going to have a table full of turkey and mashed potatoes and mac and cheese and green bean casserole, and then you're going to have a buffet of sports on television because, I don't know what the college basketball plan is as far as when they're going to schedule games or what the tournaments are going to look like, the typical non-conference tournaments and that sort of thing. But it's going to be an exciting time. And I think that they'll still probably dedicate Thanksgiving Day. They'll probably let the NFL have its day on Thanksgiving. There'll probably be, a college football game here or there. There's usually, the Egg Bowl with Mississippi, and Mississippi State is played on that day. But you're right. From Monday that week through Sunday that week, it's going to be an incredible sports weekend. And just the month of November in general. I mean, you also have the Masters in November. You have, you're going to have, I don't know if the NBA is planning to come back in November for their 2020-21 season. Obviously, the NFL, college football, college basketball. It's just going to be a great, great month for sports. And after having 5 months of no sports, it's going to be a really fun November.
Well, the funny thing is, I told you before we came on, normally I have just an entire page of stuff, different topics to have to get to. I didn't even do that today. I'm like, for one, there's just one main thing to talk about. You don't need anything. And I was so excited. And it's just been a nonstop. And it's going to be that way. And I'm just, oh my gosh, you just get giddy thinking about the return of this stuff because you don't have to create content anymore. And it's amazing. But man, now where does the story go? We talked about the testing for Indiana and how stringent that is going to be. They're starting their testing today, which they have to pay for themselves, I think, until the end of this month. But the testing, the protocols. But getting back to, I think having football is going to give the Big Ten a pass, as I talked about a minute ago. But I think Kevin Warren is really kind of hurting himself. And I don't think he did himself any favors yesterday with that. Surely to gosh, I cannot be the only person that looked at that bumbling, fumbling response of his and thought the same thing.
No, I think that you were in the majority there because from what I saw on social media, it seemed to me that a lot of people felt the same way you did, not just with that question, but with how he handled the entire situation. And I think he even said at one point in the interview, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but he said something to the effect of, this is my 1 year anniversary of being named Big Ten commissioner or whatever the case might have been. So it was really like just kind of an out of touch, like, can you take a context clue? And so it was a very self-serving comment. And I think that you go back to August 11th and once he canceled the college football season in the Big Ten, he made the comment, this isn't the end of the world. And it's like, how out of touch can you be with that? For a lot of these people, for business owners, for people in sports media and journalism and, these student athletes, players, coaches, their families, it's not the end of the world, but you're talking about major financial implications, and you're talking about ramifications on jobs and welfare and things of that nature. And so he's just been very out of touch this entire time. So I don't think you're alone in that category. But like I said, because it was good news yesterday, I think more people were talking about the fact that the Big Ten is returning. Now what Kevin Warren has to do, he has to repair those relationships. He needs to get on the phone with all 14 athletic directors, with all 14 university presidents, with all 14 Big Ten head football coaches, one by one, and have a conversation, open up these lines of communication, because you're going to have, if your plan is to be a long tenured commissioner in the Big Ten, like Jim Delaney was, I'm not saying he's going to be there 30 years, but you have to restore those relationships because obviously you've lost a lot of trust, at least from the athletic directors and the head coaches. And I don't think there's any question about that. There's a lot of frustration right now, and he's going to have to repair those. And like I said, it's an easy fix. Open the lines of communication, make sure everybody's on the same page, and it can still be a successful tenure, but you do have a lot of patchwork to do here in the next couple months.
Then we've got the excitement now of thinking about football in Indiana and the season that we thought we had lost, and now we may be getting back. And we'll talk about that with John Blau from the Bloomington Herald-Times when we come back. Indiana Sports Beat coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Back with more right after this.
Hello, everybody. Jim Coyle from Indiana Sports Beat. When I'm not covering the Hoosiers, you can find me at Bubba's 33 in Clarksville, located on the northeast corner of I-65 at Veterans Parkway. Bubba's 33 has hand-tossed pizzas, bold burgers, and ice-cold beer from a select list of local craft brewers. An incredible food selection, all made fresh daily, Whether you're meeting the team for that post-win meal in the family dining area or meeting friends for happy hour to watch the game on one of Bubba's 50 TVs, Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
We all want a winning smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you will get at Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Reynolds Family Dentistry has been serving the dental needs of Hoosier families for over 30 years. Let Doctors Roger and Jay Reynolds take care of your family. Just off of I-65 at 809 South Indiana Avenue in Sellersburg. Call 812-246-3368. That's Reynolds Family Dentistry, 812-246-3368.
Now that warm weather has arrived, it's time to hit the links, and there's no better place than the golf club at Eagle Point in Bloomington. Voted best golf course by the readers of the Bloomington Herald-Times, the golf club at Eagle Point is under new ownership, has new fairways and bunkers, and it's open to the public. When the round's over, there's cold beer and a full menu at the Eagle Point Pub and Bistro. Call 812-824-1100 to make a tee time. That's 812-824-1100. The golf club at Eagle Point in Bloomington. This is Jim Coyle from Indiana Sports Beat with Coyle and Leary. Indiana Sports Beat is now a part of the Rivals Network. You can go to thehoosier.com to sign up. It's free. Catch the show there each day live or at your convenience. You can also like or follow us on Facebook, follow the show's rebroadcast anywhere you podcast. If we're not on a radio station where you live, we should be. Let your local station know they need to carry Indiana Sports Beat with Coyle and Leary, or simply go to thehoosier.com.
Some of the best sounds you'll ever hear are generic, safe, effective, even money-saving, just like FDA-approved generic drugs. Even if they don't come in the exact same color or shape as their brand name equivalents, they have the same key ingredients and go through a rigorous review process. Talk to your doctor or pharmacist today and visit fda.gov/generic drugs. Generics are safe, effective, and can save you money. You'll like the sound of that.
Today's guest is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville, with hand-tossed pizzas, bold burgers, and ice-cold beer. Pizza, burgers, beer. Bubba's 33 in Clarksville.
I'm gonna find ya. I wanna get ya one way.
Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios on this Thursday, September 17th. Justin Schutte from Saturday Tradition sitting in with me, and joined now by John Blau from the Bloomington Herald-Times. Johnny, how are you doing, sir? Well, I think we may have lost John, so
He's there.
Dustin, we'll work on.
He's there.
Are you there, John?
I'm there. Are you there?
There you are, sorry. There you go, buddy. So we didn't hear you there, buddy. How you been, man? Been a busy day finally.
Yeah. Well, it's been a busy past few months. It's just off and on. You know, one day is a crazy storm or whatever. The next day is a little boring, but it's back and forth.
Yeah, I guess instead of busy, I should have said exciting, because for me, it's been like Christmas. I've been all giddy. We actually have football coming back for sure. We have a return date for basketball, and I'm really excited about getting to see this Indiana football team now, and the thought of it, because we thought we may not get to, and 'cause it's just a great opportunity for them, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously everybody wants to see some sports, so I think everybody's going to be happy to be able to see it.
John, you've
Good
obviously
return
been.
of Michael Penix.
Oh, good. Sorry, John. You've obviously been closer to the Indiana football program, and one of the things, before we talk about the reinstatement of the fall season, is I didn't get the sense in hearing some of the things Tom Allen was saying during the spring that he really was all that gung ho about a spring football season this year. Did you get that sense as well, or was he a little bit more open than maybe what he was led to believe?
No, yeah, I think he definitely didn't want to play in the spring. I mean, he brought that up several times, that he wanted to be able to preserve the 2021 season at all costs. He didn't want something where you're playing late into the spring, you have a condensed off season, you maybe have to shrink the fall 2021 season. He wanted something, even the proposals from, I think it was James Franklin that was pushing for the domes. I think he much rather would have played in the winter if he could, then kind of push it into the spring. So I think getting a fall season like we're about to have, I think that's pretty much what Tom Allen wanted at the end of the day.
Yeah, there was so much concern about going into the next year and mitigating the 2021 season. Now, fortunately, we won't have to worry about that. The Pac-12 now, they may have to. We don't know what they're going to do, but that's not a concern of ours. But as we move forward now, there's a lot less. When originally the schedule came out, John, they had plenty of buffers built in with some bye weeks. We've got a lot less time here, so it's going to be, I guess, a lot tougher to get it all in. But I think the optimism is very high because the protocols put in place and the testing being done by Indiana is very stringent.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely, I don't know if you're walking a tight line, if you want to say that, or playing with fire. I mean, the testing will identify people that have been infected, but there still is kind of a responsibility on the student athletes. There still is, there's always still that chance that someone could, end up getting infected in a situation where they thought maybe they wouldn't. And not having those bye weeks built in anymore, you might have games canceled. I mean, you may not play all 9. You may play 8. You may play 7. But, yeah, like you were saying, the hope is with that daily testing, you can identify people who have been infected. You can pull them off the practice field. And there's not possibly 1 day, 2 days where someone who has COVID, you didn't know had COVID, is infecting other people. So, there is a hope that with the protocols you get it through, but there definitely still is a risk there that we don't actually get all these games in because there aren't those bye weeks, that flexibility anymore.
Yeah, I know at Kansas State, guys, I heard them say yesterday that their contact tracing, if somebody even mentions that they even walked past you, not an athlete, just any student, that person is quarantined for 14 days. So hopefully we don't run into that mess. But Dustin, it looks like it's going to be an exciting fall at least.
Yeah, and I think my next question, John, is, we looked at this and everybody thought that maybe October 10th or October 17th would be the date. Instead, it's going to be October 24th. You've had players for over a month in the Indiana program who have thought, we're not going to have a season. What is your sense, and maybe what's Tom Allen's sense of how he has to redirect the focus now? Because as hard as these kids were still training maybe for a season, you have to think that that's going to intensify now that they know that there's something to play for.
Well, yeah, I mean, we actually talked to Aaron Wellman, the strength coach, about this in terms of how you do ramp up. And he was talking about not going too hard, too fast, because he didn't want to, be in a situation where he found out, what the timelines changed and we do too much too early and you have some of those soft tissue injuries. So they've been kind of doing kind of a steady, I think Tom Allen said yesterday, some 7-on-7 work, some fundamental work. I know they've been conditioning. I don't know the level of it exactly. But at the same time, I mean, you got about 5 weeks now to ramp up. I think 6 weeks was the model before that everybody was talking about. So it's really just taking that 1 week off. I mean, IU's football program, if you compare it to Wisconsin, for instance, who they have their own issues in terms of being shut down. At least IU's isn't shut down. I mean, they're able to, start ramping up. You hope with that, what they have been doing, maybe that first week of that 6 week period has already kind of been taken care of. You can kind of ramp up from here. But yeah, it is an interesting balance to be had in terms of how you now, fit into this period of time, the appropriate conditioning, the appropriate strength work. Tom Allen was even talking about the amount of hitting you do. You have to kind of think about it. I mean, do you do a lot of that, potentially put some wear and tear on your players' bodies, or do you kind of hold off on that? But you have to be ready for a Big Ten season as well. So there's a lot to really work through. It's an interesting, complex time for coaches and obviously strength and conditioning coaches as well.
Yeah, I think the injuries are going to be another topic that comes up because I think that no matter what is done, there's going to be injuries like there always are. And then you're going to have detractors saying, well, is this COVID related? And which there's no way you're going to be able to relate that or not. So it's pointless to do that. But hopefully they get to go through there as healthily as possible, which that's the key to making sure that to mitigate, doing everything they can to mitigate the injuries. And they are with the strength coaches and Aaron Wellman doing the best he can, and Indiana putting all the protocols in place to achieve that thus far. John, as we do move forward from a competitive standpoint, you asked a question to Tom Allen yesterday, and my question that I already planned was actually in that same vein. These games will be played without fans, and Indiana's obviously going to have to go on the road someplace, whether it's at Ohio State or Michigan, one of these stadiums where they have had great trouble over the years playing, and that's not going to be an issue this year without the crowd noise. That could completely change Indiana's fortunes this year.
I mean, it could. I think it's a variable, though, that can work both ways. I mean, it's just how do you kind of focus, and how do you kind of I don't know, how do you kind of get motivated or not motivated, or what does that crowd noise do for you personally as an individual? I mean, I'm sure there's certain players who actually feed off of the fact that there's a crowd noise, or I'm the villain coming into the stadium right now. I mean, just psychologically, how you deal with that as a player, I think would be very, per the individual. I know that Tom Allen obviously said that the variable he would think would go with the advantage of the road team, so you don't have to obviously deal with that crowd noise in terms of playing through it, signaling, doing all the things you would normally have to do. But at the end of the day, I mean, I feel like it's more of an individual thing. I think there's some players that might be freaked out by the fact that, why is there nobody here? Why is there nobody, cheering right now? There might be other players who love it. Maybe it's a little more serene. It's more in their, their flavor. But I just think it's a really, really interesting thing that could make things, we always talk about week one games being kind of swirly. I think every game could be kind of squirrely now. It was just the way it is with nobody being there to watch. I mean, how you motivate yourself week to week. And what is that crowd noise like? I mean, I saw Florida, they were showing an example what they're pumping in. How loud is it going to be? What is it going to sound like? It's all going to be an interesting dynamic in terms of how teams actually are impacted by it at the end of the day.
John, this is going to be, I know this is going to be kind of a weird question, because we've had a month now where we thought the season was going to be canceled. And obviously the teams are going to endure players who are going to the NFL or opting out of the 2020 season. But, I put out there the other day that I think Indiana, when you look at the talent they have returning, and when you look at particularly what Michigan and Michigan State are losing, and the new coach with Mel Tucker at Michigan State, do you think that Indiana has the talent? Are they a team that can finish third in the Big Ten East this year?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we were talking about in the last question. I mean, things being variable, things being kind of hard to predict maybe in terms of how teams are going to play just on a week-to-week basis, and obviously with the virus. But looking at Indiana's roster, I mean, I think it's one of the first years in a while we've probably looked at it, and there's very few weak points. I mean, they may not have some of the stars that in Ohio State or even in Michigan or Wisconsin or some of those big time blue chip programs in the kind of in the conference have. But I look at position by position group, and I really don't see a lot of weaknesses. I mean, defensive line was the thing we worried about coming into the year last year, with some of the defensive tackles they found during the course of the year, DeMarcus Elliott, Sio Nofo-Angatoa. Some of those guys up front, you feel better about that. Offensive line's the position group that I somewhat worry about with losing those two interior guys, Hunter Littlejohn, Simon Stepanak. How are they going to, improve that is a question. But you do bring back three really important guys on the offensive line. Penix, the quarterback. You got two great running backs, Samson James, Stevie Scott. You've got Watt Fillier back at receiver, Tywan Mullen at corner, a bunch of guys in the secondary, linebacker crew. They say might be the best linebacker group that they've had in a long time. It's a really, really talented team across the board. So it's definitely a team that you would think with all the production that comes back could definitely be in it and compete in every single game. I mean, it's not out of the question. I don't think that you could have a nice finish, whether it's third in the conference. That remains to be seen, or third in the East. It remains to be seen with some of the heavy hitters you have in the East. But Indiana definitely, that was the whole thing about the season potentially being canceled. Everybody was kind of really sad because this is one of the more talented IU teams there's been in a while. But now they get a chance to play. It should be exciting to see kind of how they do perform.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited, looking forward to it. And then another unique aspect, the next thing we're waiting on is the release of the schedule. Of course, we know part of it will be divisional games, the majority of it, but the Western games, the one Purdue will have that game. But then who's going to be that ninth game? Of course, the play across game. That's a pretty unique format, and it could offer a totally different game, or it could offer a unique scenario where you play Purdue and back or play Purdue again, I guess, right?
Well, actually, Barry Alvarez did qualify when he was asked on BTN about the crossover game that they don't want it to be a rematch. There might be a situation where, there's a 3 seed versus a 3 seed, but they play during the regular season. They might try to flip things if they can. I don't know if it would be a 3 versus a 5 or 4 versus a 6 or what might happen. But, yeah, I don't think they want to see IU Purdue twice in one season. But it is interesting because I covered high school football the last few years before coming up to this beat, and actually the Western Indiana Conference had a crossover game, and so it reminded me of that when I saw it, that they always have their regular season, and then they would have the top 2 from each of their divisions play for a championship, and then these similar seed situations. So it's not a completely original idea. I mean, it's an interesting idea from Jim Harbaugh, but I've seen it in the high school ranks before. It's not completely new.
And then that leaves the one other opportunity, John, of the potential yet for Indiana to play against Peyton Ramsey and Northwestern, as we had thought that may not happen. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but that potential is still there.
Yes, it is. I mean, it will be interesting to see. I mean, I actually remember when the schedule came out the first time, I guess on August, not the first time, but the first time, and then 6 days later canceled. I actually read the wrong column at first, and I thought IU was playing Northwestern when I saw that, that logo was there. But, it didn't happen last time. They could reshuffle, or it could just be a situation where they take the 10 game and they just subtract a game, and that's basically what the schedule is going to be. So it may just be the same deal. I mean, we'll find out, obviously. I think, Peyton would enjoy it. Whether IU would enjoy it, I don't think they'd have any issue with it either. I mean, obviously, it would be a nice little storyline for everybody. So we'll see.
Another on-field question for you this year is last year Indiana probably didn't have quite the defense that Tom Allen would have liked when he got there in 2016 and was on Kevin Wilson's staff as the defensive coordinator. He talked about kind of the fundamentals, getting turnovers, making sure we tackle properly. And Indiana struggled with some of those things last year. Do you get the sense that he's going to have more of a hands-on approach to the defense this year and have Kane Womack on a little tighter leash this season, or is he going to let that kind of play out?
I mean, the one unit that Tom Allen did talk about assisting a little bit going into the spring with the special teams. I mean, I think coming off of the Gator Bowl, obviously with that onside kick they couldn't get, I think there was definitely a want with Casey Teagarden to help out there and help with the transition and also just help shore up things there. But defensively, we didn't hear much of that. I don't really think. I think, obviously, Kane Womack's now going into his second year as a defensive coordinator. And while some of the results were ugly at times, I mean, that Purdue game, they were a little bit like a sieve at times, and obviously early in the season. That Gator Bowl, though, is one of the better defensive performances we've seen from IU all year. And throughout the year, if you do look at the stats, the way they did trend, it seemed like the defense, for the most part, got better kind of sans that Purdue game. They still can take another step for sure. And that's probably the hope, honestly, is that you do have all of these players back on defense. You really didn't lose a whole lot other than really Raekwon Jones, who was really kind of the more leader heartbeat of that defense. The thing that defense has to do better is they have to get more pressure from their front four. Because this is a defense that was just, they like to blitz, they like to bring pressure, but not really, being able to get much from that front four really does handicap you or kind of hamstring you. And, even bringing 5 and not getting home a lot. So, I mean, really, if they can get more pressure with that front four, if aside from Taiwan Mullen, if some of those other corners can improve, Reese Taylor, Jalen Williams, all of them, the safeties, with Jamar Johnson and Devon Matthews, are hoping those will get better. I really don't think Tom Allen needs to have his hands in it that much. I think you kind of let Kane Womack keep his hands on kind of the reins and see how much better it gets. I think that's what the hope is. At least I think that they have so much young talent coming back that they will get better. They just really need to get more pressure with that front four. I would think that's the main thing.
John, I can't thank you enough for taking time to join us today, man. I'm looking forward to, we still won't be seeing you as much. We don't get around the media center as much, but I'm looking forward to us having some things to cover and hopefully see you soon.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, sir. John Blau from the Bloomington Herald-Times joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat to talk some Indiana football and Big Ten football, because we're excited about that return. We've got a lot more to get to as well. Justin Schutte from Saturday Night Tradition is sitting in with me, and we'll be back to the Indiana Sports Beat to the Golf Club Eagle Point Studios right after this.
Hello, everybody. Jim Coyle from Indiana Sports Beat. When I'm not covering the Hoosiers, you can find me at Bubba's 33 in Clarksville, located on the northeast corner of I-65 at Veterans Parkway. Bubba's 33 has hand-tossed pizzas, bold burgers, and ice-cold beer from a select list of local craft brewers. An incredible food selection, all made fresh daily. Whether you're meeting the team for that post-win meal in the family dining area or meeting friends for happy hour to watch the game on one of Bubba's 50 TVs. Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
We all want a winning smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you will get at Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Reynolds Family Dentistry has been serving the dental needs of Hoosier families for over 30 years. Let Doctors Roger and Jay Reynolds take care of your family. Just off of I-65 at 809 South Indiana Avenue in Sellersburg. Call 812-246-3368. That's Reynolds Family Dentistry, 812-246-3368.
Now that warm weather has arrived, it's time to hit the links, and there's no better place than the golf club at Eagle Point in Bloomington. Voted best golf course by the readers of the Bloomington Herald-Times, the golf club at Eagle Point is under new ownership, has new fairways and bunkers, and it's open to the public. When the round's over, there's cold beer and a full menu at the Eagle Point Pub and Bistro. Call 812-824-1100 to make a tee time. That's 812-824-1100. The golf club at Eagle Point in Bloomington. This is Jim Coyle from Indiana Sports Beat with Coyle and Leary. Indiana Sports Beat is now a part of the Rivals Network. You can go to thehoosier.com to sign up. It's free. Catch the show there each day live or at your convenience. You can also like or follow us on Facebook, follow the show's rebroadcast anywhere you podcast. If we're not on a radio station where you live, we should be. Let your local station know they need to carry Indiana Sports Beat with Coyle and Leary, or simply go to thehoosier.com.
Some of the best sounds you'll ever hear are generic, safe, effective, even money-saving, just like FDA-approved generic drugs. Even if they don't come in the exact same color or shape as their brand name equivalents, they have the same key ingredients and go through a rigorous review process. Talk to your doctor or pharmacist today and visit fda.gov/generic drugs. Generics are safe, effective, and can save you money. You'll like the sound of that.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
Dave from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios here on this Thursday. It's a happy day. We've got stuff to talk about, man. Text into the show from Ryan up in Michigan, Whitmore, Michigan. I am predicting IU football will be third in the Big Ten East. He's got Michigan, Ohio State, and Indiana. I agree with that. He's going with Minnesota first in the West. Oh, wow. We'll talk about that in a minute. I'll let Dustin do that. But, yeah, I agree with Indiana. That's where they ended up last year. Yeah, they climbed up to the third spot last year, and they should stay there. And if not, actually, they could have tied Michigan. They should have tied Michigan. But let's see what they can do this year. I talked to John, and I asked Tom Allen that question yesterday. Emergency alert. Alert.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, thank you. Let's get that taken care of, hopefully, for people. I hate to see that. But, I asked Tom Allen yesterday. Will, I don't know if you can get that clip pulled up or not. I didn't remind you to do so. I wished I would have. But I asked him about, and I mentioned this to John, going on the road. And I think that it's going to make a difference, because how can not playing 100,000 people affect you, especially when they're trying to affect your play? That's not going to be there, and that's been part of the issue of it getting into a team like Indiana's head, I think. Let's hear what Tom Allen had to say first, and then we'll talk about it. Go ahead, Will. Day for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
My question is kind of similar to John's, but in relation to playing specifically on the road and inside the division, winning at Ohio State or Michigan, Penn State has been particularly difficult for Indiana over the years. Does this unique situation offer Indiana a little bit more of an opportunity to get that done with no fans being in attendance in those large stadiums?
Yeah, I think there's no question it's going to be a variable because, that's a huge advantage that those teams have when they have, 100,000+ fans in attendance. Just the energy that you get from that as a home team, there's no question it makes it really hard to play there. And then just the being able to execute, and the call, the communication, all those kind of things that you run into and the way that it, it makes it harder. It makes everything more difficult. So I think it will be a variable that will help, the teams that are playing in those environments, and per the schedule, we do have to go to Ohio State this year, so that's, to Michigan, those kind of things that are unique and different. So, I just know that, just talking to, like I said, other teams that have played in those situations, it kind of took away that strong home field advantage that you usually get from those teams that have such large stadiums and they're always and usually are full when you play against them. So I think at every level though, it's all relative to that. So everybody's kind of experiencing that right now. And but you just got to be mentally tough. You got to bring your own juice, to those situations and be able to play and be mentally and physically tough. And that's what everybody's going to have to do. So it's an equal playing field for everybody.
Thanks. That was Indiana football coach Tom Allen on Zoom with us yesterday. And I really do. And I tell you, the team I think that is most susceptible of all of those is Mr. Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines, because I think they're kind of susceptible, period, this year. And without having 110,000 fans to help you back you up, I think it's going to make a difference for them. That could be really bad for Harbaugh.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say that I get fired up every time I hear Tom Allen talk. That's just number one. Like he could be talking about what type of breakfast cereal he eats, and it's going to fire me up. Just like the complete opposite of Bill Belichick. But I think you're right. And I'll tell you another team that I think is going to be interesting is going to be Penn State, because you usually that's one of the most crazy environments in college football with whiteouts and over 100,000 in attendance there too. But we go back a week and we talked to Jerry DiNardo about this, and he kind of echoed what Tom Allen said yesterday, and that is he thinks it's going to have an advantage for teams potentially like a Rutgers or an Indiana that isn't accustomed to playing inside of these these full stadiums, these big home crowds that kind of have to generate their own momentum, their own juice, if you will, from the very beginning. And I think that there are teams. Now, I think Penn State is a lot more talented than Michigan, but Michigan is definitely a team that feeds off the crowd energy. And when you look, they lost Dylan McCaffrey yesterday. Wide receiver Nico Collins is signing with an agent and going to the NFL draft. Their top returning offensive lineman Jalen Mayfield's going to the draft. We'll see if any of those guys decide to come back. But I think that there's a real chance, and I say this every year, so take it with a grain of salt, but I think there's a real chance Indiana could beat Michigan. That's the game they've been closest to. I think Penn State and Ohio State are really, really good. It'll be interesting to see how they perform without fans in the stands. But I really do believe that with everything Michigan lost, with the unique circumstances without fans in the stadium, and with the amount of talent that Indiana has coming back, especially offensively with Walt Phillier, with Michael Penix, and with Stevie Scott and Samson James, I think that they have a real chance to take that next step. And they're probably not going to hit 9 or 10 wins, considering you're playing only 9 or 10 games this season. But if you knock off one of the big boys and you can finish third in the Big Ten East, that's a huge momentum swing, not only for your football program, but then on the recruiting trail as well.
I agree 1,000%. And Tim hit the text line up as well, and that kind of plays right into that. And you can do that anytime. I know that most people listen to this show when we're not live, and that's fine. You can still text in. We'll get to the questions the next day. 812-269-6367. 812-269-6367, the text line anytime. But Tim asked, does less games and a few of the top players from top schools opting out help Indiana having a chance to win the Big Ten in football? Indiana's not going to win the Big Ten, but to win in Big Ten football. Maybe, but I don't know. Ohio State, yeah, they've lost a couple guys, but that's a factory. The next one just slides into the slot. It's like a shark's tooth over there. They just slide the next shark's tooth right up in there.
As long as Ohio State has Justin Fields, they're going to be just fine. And they've only had, as far as I know, they've only had 2 players opt out so far, Wyatt Davis and Shaun Wade. And Wyatt Davis is trying to come back, and he was a key offensive lineman. He's going to probably going to be an All-American this season if he does play. So yeah, you're looking again. Like I said, Michigan has had some guys opt out. That's probably the team you can upset. Penn State had Micah Parsons opt out, so one of their top defensive players is gone, or the top defensive player I should say is gone. So like I said, Penn State feeds off the energy at their home stadium in Beaver Stadium in Happy Valley. Michigan does the same. I think Ohio State is probably untouchable. I would put Penn State probably in that category, but you can beat Michigan. You should be able to beat Michigan State. There's no reason you can't beat Michigan, Michigan State, Maryland, and Rutgers this season. And then we'll see how the cross division games go, because you're obviously going to be comparable and talented enough to beat Purdue. And then I honestly don't know that there's a team in the West that Indiana can't compete with. Wisconsin's going to be they're going to take a step back. Iowa's probably going to take a step back. Nebraska's still not quite there yet. And obviously Illinois and Northwestern were at the bottom last season. So I think Indiana could sweep their non-conference games or their non-division games and see who they match up against there at the end of the season in that 9th game.
Yeah, that's going to be. I think they can win 2 of the 3 or not. Yeah, is it 3?
It would be 3 at the final game.
Yeah, I think of the 2 of the 3. I see that, but I also see on the East. I see them. They should have beat Penn State at Penn State last year, legitimately. Yep. And they're better. They're a better team this year. Now, I think Penn State may also be better. So I don't know how that's going to go, and I don't know where that game's going to be played. But Ohio State to me is the only team in Indiana. If you want to on paper say they don't have a shot, they don't have a shot against Ohio State on paper. Anybody else? I agree with you on Michigan and Penn State. They should have beat Michigan State last year as well. So they already finished 3rd. And they should have tied Michigan State last year with that. I think they can make that next jump. I do. Maybe that's just being a little added hopeful to keep my fandom out, but I legitimately look at what they have coming back. And offensively, the question mark is going to be offensive coordinator, because you've got a new offensive coordinator there. Although Tom Allen yesterday talked about not changing the system, it's not about the system to me. It's about calling the right play at the right time in the sequence of the game or in the sequence of a series. That is the deal. And when you got a guy that's been doing it for 10 years and he's been doing it very, very successfully, it's easy to have confidence in that guy. You can just go on and forget it. I guess we'll have to wait to see the first game and how that goes. I don't know, but I hope it all goes well for him. But that's going to be a big key to this offense, because the talent is unquestionably there.
And you saw last year that kind of offense, that style that Kalen DeBoer brought to Bloomington can work. Indiana has the talent. And I think offensively too, you look at some of the players that Tom Allen is recruiting on the offensive side. I think he's kind of recruiting for that offense. I think that he wants Nick Sheridan, to maybe be a little bit of his own offensive coordinator there, but also keep the framework that DeBoer brought with him. And, there were some struggles last season. They had some issues at times in the running game. They weren't as good on the offensive line as they needed to be, especially in some of those bigger games. But by and large, that offense worked. And you don't want to scrap that entirely. And I think that they're going to keep a lot of what Kalen DeBoer brought. They have the talent to run it. And if they have an offensive line that's better than it was last season, I know they had some key losses there. But if they improve on the offensive line, and they get their running game going this season, I think that they have the possibility to score even more points this season than they did last season. But it's all going to be, to me, dependent. You have the skill position players. Michael Penix is going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the Big Ten. Samson James and Stevie Scott are 2 really good complementary running backs to each other. Walt Filler is a good wide receiver. They have other talent at the wide receiver position. It's all going to be about offensive line play. And if you can establish a ground game this season, the sky is really the limit for Indiana.
It's been so exciting that we've been able to talk about one thing this entire show. I mean, there weren't any NBA games last night to even talk about anyway, and there's only one tonight, I think. But the sheer fact that we'd be able to talk about one thing without even taking a breath is utterly amazing. That's the first time that has happened in months and months and months. So quickly, how about Nick Westbrook? You want to talk about some Indiana football? He was promoted to the 53-man roster for the Titans. There's a weapon Indiana had last year that didn't get utilized, but hopefully he can go on and have a great career there. That's exciting for Nick Westbrook.
And that's also, a promo for your program there too. If you're able to carve out a spot and say, hey, we can. One of the issues for Indiana has been, it hasn't had guys drafted. It hasn't had a ton of success. I know there's some exceptions. Obviously, every program has a guy or two that is successful in the NFL. But you look on Sundays, and what do you see? You see guys from Penn State. You see guys from Ohio State lighting up the field. And so that's been an issue for Indiana. So the more guys you can get on Sundays, the more you can say, hey, look, you can come to Indiana, get developed. Not only can you be successful here in Bloomington, but you can be successful on the next level. And I think that this year is also going to provide a unique opportunity because, if guys test positive and they're going to have to sit out, if players decide that they want to opt out at a certain point in the season, it's going to create more opportunities for some of these guys that maybe didn't get drafted or got drafted low to carve out a roster spot, not just on the practice squad, but as we saw with Nick Westbrook, get the opportunity to prove that he belongs on a 53-man roster. And it'll be interesting to see if he gets onto the field for the Titans, but he was obviously a really good deep threat for the Hoosiers, and an injury kind of offset his career just a little bit, but he's got some momentum and he's working hard and it's paying off for him right now.
On the recruiting side of things, I saw that the 2021 recruiting prospects, the NCAA extended the recruiting dead period through January 1st now for the rest of the year, which I didn't expect anything otherwise. I don't think that it'll change after January 1st, to be honest with you. Maybe they'll try to change it in some fashion, but it's just not going to happen. And that is more aligned into basketball recruiting than football because there are several high-profile targets. Trey Kaufman for Indiana down at Silver Creek High School in Southern Indiana for one. Mason Miller, another one. Those guys are undecided. They have not determined where they're going to go to school next year. And Trey Kaufman went on his own and went down and drove to North Carolina, took some visits to Virginia, I think, North Carolina as well, unofficial. But these guys, these official visits, they're off the table. It's going to affect recruiting. You would certainly think so. It'll be interesting to see how that comes out on basketball. We saw it on football when this first happened, Dustin. I think there was an influx of guys that committed to like Ohio State, to the schools, the big schools. There's an offer. I'm taking it. It's like, man, I'm taking that offer now. Not so much in basketball have we seen that happen.
Yeah, and in football and basketball recruiting, it's always interesting to me because those two things are so very different. Like you see, it's not uncommon to see, guys flip at the last second. And when you're talking about college football or commit once or twice, and then before they finally make their final decision. In basketball,
Indiana
usually
just had a decommitment.
Yeah, and usually in basketball, you don't see that quite as frequently. And I don't know what the difference is there. I don't know if it's just because there's less guys on the team or I really don't know the differences. But that's going to be it. Yeah. And so maybe you're more focused on recruiting, whereas in football, it kind of has to be like an all-you-can-eat buffet, right? You have to offer as many kids because you know you're not going to get all of them. So it's a very interesting process. It puts the pressure on Indiana because it doesn't have its campus to show off in the fall. Obviously Bloomington is beautiful. This time of year, it's not going to have that to show off this year. So it's going to have to put the pressure on the Hoosiers to win this season because people aren't going to be able to attend games. They're not going to be able to take in the campus life. And as you said, what are players doing? As soon as they get that Ohio State offer, that Penn State offer, Michigan offer, they're taking it because they know that if they go there, they can get to the next level. And it's time. Indiana is still one of those up and coming, growing programs. But you got guys in there that are advocating for it. Tywan Mullen has been one of the loudest advocates for Indiana football and saying that this is a program where you can come, you can win, and then you can go on to the next level. So you got to have more players like that. So I expect actually a lot more of these IU football players on the current roster to maybe help in the recruiting aspect, but you got to win this season. If you're not winning, it's going to be awful tough going on the recruiting trail when you can't have kids on campus.
Taiwan Mullen can start helping recruiting right at home. He's got a brother that Indiana has offered and would like to get on campus. So his recruiting can help and can come right in. So we'll look forward to that. And so, yeah, make sure you go to thehoosier.com to keep up on all things related to Indiana and the Big Ten. Complete coverage of recruiting and all game coverage of everything across the board. Also, Dustin Schutte with the Saturday Tradition, of course, for complete coverage of Big Ten football as well. We appreciate him taking the time to sit in with us today, as he does each and every week. Looking forward to it. And what timing, man! How perfect! You got to be here for Christmas Day.
I know. As soon as the news came, after I got done, turning down my Rocky Balboa music, I was excited because I knew we'd have actual football stuff to talk about today. So I'm glad it came out Wednesday and we were able to have a full show talking not just about Big Ten football, but about Big Ten actual things happening on the field in a month.
Yeah, if I'd have known that, I'd had Will play that as your walk-up music today.
I'll have to text you next time before the show.
Absolutely, to get some walk-up music for you. But big thanks to John Blau from the Bloomington Herald-Times as well. Make sure if you're in Evansville, you got Dan Nagurski coming up next, so make sure you give him a listen as well. I was on with him yesterday. It was always great. A lot of great games coming up this weekend down in Evansville, football games too. So hope it's a great week for everybody. We appreciate it. Look forward to doing this again tomorrow. So for Dustin Schutte, John Blau, and Will, this is Jim Coyle. Make sure you wear your mask, do something nice for somebody, and until tomorrow, I will see you on the radio.